I think Airtel was the funnest and the least sleep ride that I have ever had. I was head of strategy when Reliance Jio was launching, which was the yes, that and some more, yes. For me, early on, I realized the importance of behaving like a leader and then taking them along on that difficult journey of come, let's do this together, let's figure this out, right?
Yeah, it sounds easy when she just says it, but honestly, when you're in that boardroom or in that war room and you have to make these difficult choices that no, we will be profitable, but then you have to keep holding on that no, my decision will play out.
Without any doubt, the MBA was very, very pivotal for my career. It taught me the value of hard work. It's like a mini boot camp for what real business world is going to be.
Alright, so I think Adhiraj gave a very brief intro. Let me give a little bit more of a detailed intro of Sucheta. She's a prolific leader. She has, in her past, graduated from IIM Ahmedabad. She has worked with Bain, and in fact, as part of Bain, she used to go and hire at IIMs as well. She's also been the VP of strategy at Airtel and got a chance to directly work with Mr. Gopal, which I think was about 5 years.
Yeah.
I think which was, I'm sure, an experience of its own. We'll talk about that as well. Also was the COO at WeWork for a brief period, about a year and a half or two. And then the MD or the managing director at Branch International, one of the profitable and large fintech companies in the world. More importantly, she's also a mother of 2 kids, 10 and 7. So this journey along with raising 2 kids, and also a better half of a good friend of mine, Prabjeet Singh, who is the head of Uber India. Together they make a very powerful couple. So thank you so much, Sucheta, for coming down here.
Thank you. The pleasure
We tried really hard to get Prabjeet also to come down at the same time. Unfortunately, he is busy with travels, and I'm sure he'll come down at some point in time. I'm sure I'm going to drag him down here at least once.
You should.
So again, thank you so much for being here. This is our first founding cohort of 56 students. I gave you a brief about them already earlier. Amazing folks. They have a lot to learn over the next year and a half in this journey. So maybe start off with, tell us a little bit about how different instances of your journey, I mean, this what we just spoke about right now, has helped you get to where you're today, and what are the aspects that you learned along each one of them. So maybe a little bit more detailed on your learnings through each one of them would be helpful for the crew.
Sure. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay, great. So, hi everyone, and thanks Bhavik. The pleasure's all mine. I'm so glad to be here. I'm really excited. Like Bhavik mentioned, I've done more than my fair share of industry pivots. I don't necessarily recommend it, the number of changes I've done. But I've sort of switched industries, switched jobs, switched companies in a pattern that is a little bit, I think, uniquely mine. Bhavik's probably one of the other few people who kept switching industries. What I learned through these sort of various leaps and even sort of small steps, maybe the 2 big things to take away is every time you parachute into a new place, a new industry, 2 things happen, right? And especially when you parachute in at senior levels, or when you're parachuting in at and expected to be leading, small team, big company, doesn't matter. 2 things happen. One is you are, of course, getting familiar with an unknown landscape, right? Brand new industry, who are the actors? What are my opponents like? What's the competitive intensity? Is there regulatory overhang? How do I quickly ramp up on what drives this industry? So there is getting familiar with an unknown landscape, right? And that takes its own sort of learning curve, and it's a bit of a hard work to get there. The second is the expectations. When you come in as a leader, when you come in from the outside, there is a certain expectation that you will also do magic, right? You're expected to have that silver bullet, right? So expected to know the answers, have that silver bullet. And that combination is a bit, highly flammable type combination. So I think I learned that, I developed my own muscle on how I ramp up quickly. How do I unlearn where required? How do I connect the dots and find patterns from my past work into whatever the newest industry or company that I'm joining. So that quick unlearning, rapid learning, quick ramp up has been a very, very helpful. So now I'm unfazed when I have to start something new. I'm not stopping and thinking and worrying कि अच्छा भी industry change करने का नहीं करने का. Like I don't. Most of you are in a world where your worlds will change quite rapidly. Like I mean, when I graduated, at least there was relatively set paths. Now it's not true, and which is a good thing. So I learned the business of ramping up quickly. And I think that's a sort of strange muscle, strange superpower that it's hard to articulate, but has held me in good stead. And I think that sort of this meandering has led to something.
You also became a CXO under the age of 40 itself, which is I think quite amazing. Like, what helped you break the glass ceiling? I'm sure you must be leading people who are much older to you as well. There's a large team looking up to a CXO who's relatively still young. And at that point in time, I think now it's still probably becoming a little bit more common for younger CEOs to step up, but that wasn't the case earlier. How did you kind of break that glass ceiling?
Yeah. I always, to the women here, you will get it. To the men, I apologize. I always say that, if you think doing the job is hard, try doing it in heels. Like, it is genuinely harder to do some of these jobs as a woman, right? So, it's a matter of fact, it's not a sexist sort of take. Genuinely harder, right? I think number one, I learned humility very early on. It's one of the things I learned at business school, so I'm glad you all are, you all are here. I was thrown into a cohort of people who were incredibly good, who were, really ambitious, who could be inspiring me on a daily, hourly basis. And so if you look around the room yourselves here, hopefully you are, I think you are in that sort of same spot that I was in 20 years ago, right? So I learned humility in business school. I was just thrown in the midst of really, really smart people, right? So from there on, I figured that, I just have to admit where I don't know, be a noob, and, authentically learn what I don't know, right? So there's no bullshitting saying, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. You just honestly admit what you don't know, right? So that really helped in learning fast, in making friends, in earning trust, and then getting to sort of the kind of growth that one aspires for. So for me, that humility was sort of a big, strange sort of supporting factor. Learned early on, stayed with me, and because I made the changes I made, it sort of came in very handy. I think I have, over time, genuinely believed and genuinely worked at, taking people along. And so as a leader, you are constantly getting other people to devote time and energy on your agenda, right? You're getting them to put 8 hours of their day job or more on stuff that you believe is important, right? So as a leader, you're not getting them to part with money, you're getting them to part with something far more important. Their time, their attention, their enthusiasm, their sort of, when they are burning the midnight oil. So for me, early on, I realized the importance of behaving like a leader, inspiring people on what I believed was the agenda, my agenda, however you phrase it, and then taking them along on that difficult journey of, come, let's do this together, let's figure this out, right? So that sort of taking people along and a combination of humility and then knowing that you want to take everyone along.
Right.
That's how then I figured that I grew as fast as I wanted to, wherever I wanted to, that sort of thing.
At a very early age, you got a chance to work directly with the CEO at Airtel, which I'm sure must have been an amazing experience of its own. Tell us a little bit more about that. How did you land that job in the first place?
Sure.
Getting a chance to directly work with the CEO of one of the largest telecom companies in the country and globally as well. And then what was the experience working directly with him?
Yeah, it was, is there anyone from telecom here or Airtel? Okay, awesome. The landing of the job was hard. I think they put me in the washing machine many times over and squeezed me out in the process of interviewing. I got asked all kinds of questions, including some that would not be considered kosher now, right? But like I was telling Bhavik, it was really the best top team to work for. It was one of the most inspiring persons I could directly report into. And I said, I'll do whatever it takes to get into this role, this job, right? So I was heading strategy for Airtel. And I remember when I kind of reasonably knew that they were making the offer, I walked up to Airtel, walked up to Gopal. Gopal Vittal is the CEO. And I said, look, I will audition in the form of a strategy role as long as you want me to. I had by then spent 9-10 years as a consultant for Bain, a big global consulting firm, helped set up the Bain India office and so on, right? So I said, I was joining as the head of strategy for Airtel. So I said, I will audition in the form of a strategy role as long as you want me to. But when you think I'm ready, you need to let me go run one of your businesses. So that was the upfront sort of ask I put in front of him when I joined. I think Airtel was the funnest and the least sleep ride that I have ever had. I was head of strategy when Reliance Jio was launching, which was the, yes, that and some more, yes. It was that and some more. I'll tell you a fun fact. This is almost 10 years ago. 2014 is when Jio launched. I was heading strategy. I don't know, you all may not remember. A GB of data at that point used to sell something like 300 rupees market price, thereabouts, right? And there'd be a lot of discounting, and also you may not see 300, but technically sort of sticker price would have been 300, and then some discounts, front-facing discounts you would get, right? When Jio launched, one of my jobs as head of strategy, a one-line problem statement was, what will they price data at, right? You can imagine that's a fair, analytical, one of those important strategic questions that you must work on, right? So I was working on that, right? And anything in Airtel is an Excel model. Anything in telecom is an Excel model that doesn't basically fit into Excel, right? You need like serious server power to do one Excel model. So I was doing like many versions of those kinds of financial modeling to arrive at what a GB of data would come. Like, I'm oversimplifying, but something like that, right? And so from 300, we build scenarios and do financial modeling and all kinds of modeling. And as you can imagine, we came down from 300 to 250 to, many tens lower. I proposed doing a model that went well below 50 rupees, okay? And this is where when everybody in Airtel, from the CEO to head of the best circle CEOs to the head of marketing, who were all, the CEO and head of marketing and the CFO, I used to work with on a daily basis. They were incredibly smart, among the best people. I would lay down my life to work with them again, right? That kind of profile. And I was considered a bit of a, wacko to suggest a sub-50 modeling. It was like, ye dekho, aa gaya consultant. They want to do this intellectual discussion about pricing, So there was a lot of like looking, completely dismissing, completely like not allowing. In the end, we did probably one model that was sub 50 or about 50, I don't remember. Does anyone remember what Jio launched at? Yes, they launched at 0, which is a finite difference from 50 also, finite negative difference. So that's probably one of the reasons I say that, we talk so much about being data driven. We got to be data informed. You have to like use data, but data is only telling you about past patterns, right? Of course you have to know it, of course you have to use it, of course you have to be smart about it, but then you also need 1 year on the ground and with your customer and with the competition. So Airtel was like, I think, many such war stories to be told.
Yeah. One of the things we are covering in the curriculum here is deep data analytics. I know it's not often covered in most graduate programs, but I think very important, for this set of users or this set of students to learn that, because future is all about very, very large data sets. Very challenging experiences all along, right? So you spoke about Airtel right now competing with Jio and this whole, I'm sure must have been an absolute crazy time in the war room out there. But you had another war room experience with WeWork as well. I mean, WeWork globally was going through this crazy turmoil. From a $49 billion company to declaring bankruptcy. And here you had to run WeWork India as a COO. Tell us, how do you kind of manage that between the two?
Yeah. I think I attract these tsunami-like events. So if I'm working somewhere, maybe don't join that company very soon. Okay, join with some time lag. No, you're spot on. I joined WeWork. We said, listen, we'll double the business. So we were about 500 crores. We said, we are going to do 1,100 crores, okay? So we're 550 something. So we're doing financial planning for a 1,100 crore business, right? And it's not easy. It's a very capex intensive business. So you need to line up the monies to also be able to generate, to do pre-sales and, you've got to, sort of like scout for buildings, open them up, do plenty of pre-sales, very aggressive pre-sales, and then have line of sight into a real, right? So we are in that world. And then I think it was November 2018 is when globally the SoftBank WeWork bust happened, right? So overnight, WeWork became from this top of the hype cycle, glam business everyone was talking about to, oh my God, you are the reason SoftBank went bust, and because SoftBank went bust, all my friends who were in OYO and every other SoftBank-backed company suddenly were like mighty pissed, because SoftBank went bust, then lots and lots of companies were affected, right? And many in India, right? WeWork here's the good, the part that I feel the most fulfilled about. The massive bust happened. SoftBank, of course, had its own share of troubles. WeWork, of course, went through a lot of mess. In India, as far as the business is concerned, we didn't see anything that I would call beyond BAU churn, beyond business as usual churn, which means we didn't lose more customers than what we had lost in the past. Right, so that was my number one concern, that we'll suddenly see churn, people will just get up and go, right? Yeah. Because WeWork is a very short-term business. Imagine you can finish your lease in the next month and walk out, right? Plenty of part of our business was very, very short-term, right? So you would imagine that will walk out of the door, right? So number one, we didn't see any sort of what I would call abnormal churn. You lose some. There's something called BAU churn to that state. Second thing I was worried about, that our order book was softened. You typically sell in advance, and that's how you build the order book, right? Those of you who've done B2B sales, you get the pre-sales order book thing. And I'd expected the order book would completely deplete, would go to zero, right? And that's the other part I'm happy about. Our order book didn't sort of at all soften. So we just doubled down for 2-3 months, constantly did, a lot of sort of the hard work of talking to our existing customers and hard work of continuing to build the order book as if nothing had happened. Right? Because customers had to see us as the stable, strong business that was genuinely, financially very less linked to global. Genuinely, we used to in fact pay WeWork Global. WeWork India used to pay out to WeWork Global. So there was no real big sort of equity ownership that Global had, that we were in distress. We were not, right? But that's not easy to tell, right? The only thing we suffered was a nasty media backlash. So that we had to, that I had to learn to deal with. But yeah, it was a fun, another tectonic shift type thing that we went through. But yeah, I think I'm wiser for it now.
So consulting first, strategy at Airtel Telecom, then WeWork, which is real estate heavy, then to fintech and micro lending largely with Branch.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that shift as well. So you were the managing director at Branch International. It's a fintech company for most of you who may be not aware of it. Does the micro lending as well. It's a global company. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think, again, switching from real estate to fintech was a bit of a leap. But the things that don't change across industries, across companies, is your ability to read a P&L, find patterns, figure out what are the drivers, and then work, find a way, truly get teams, move teams to action, right? Those of you who've done big sales jobs know that getting teams to action is really half the job, right? So I landed at Branch, funny, but I was convinced that since I knew how to run a business well, run a business from as an operator who genuinely loves running a business, I'll figure out whatever fintech throws at me, kind of thing, right? So at Branch, I'm happy to report, I was one of the early employees, I'm happy to report, we decided to be a regulated entity. It's called an RE. So we actually went to the RBI and said, "Aap humko license de do." And we were the first to get a digital lending license, saying we don't want to open a branch, right? The word branch was a funny, I don't know, we were trying to be funny because we didn't ever want to have physical branches. So we named our company Branch, whatever. But by then we were about 8-9 years old. We had operations in Africa. We had a vision to become a full-service digital bank, which is otherwise known as neobanking. When we started the company, the word neobanking didn't exist, so we called it digital banking, like an idiot-proof name to explain to people what we want to do. So we went to RBI and said, maybe give us digital lending license. You have all kinds of NBFCs. How about just let us lend on a license? Now this is funny because no fintech, even now, no fintech actually operates on a license. All fintechs are typically tech companies, both in India and abroad, and definitely in India. The business of getting license and working as a licensed entity is almost a contra choice, especially in the world of fintech in India, right? Once you're a regulated entity, it comes with a little bit of regulatory sort of stress and overhang and so on. But we said, look, we want to do business the right way and not be clubbed with sort of some of the more nefarious entities that typically end up in this part of the spectrum. So we went ahead, got a license. That took a long time. But then we were the only licensed entity who was, then safe from various RBI massacres that happened over the, next 4-5 years. Okay, because RBI does a lot of cleanup. RBI is a very good regulator. sometimes slow, but a very ethical regulator and a reasonably forward-looking regulator also. So they do a bunch of cleanup. So when many fintechs went through a lot of existential crisis when these cleanups were happening, we were fine. Because we had said, we are regulated and we are meeting every sort of compliance protocol that you have, right? So it was a bit of a strange choice to go regulated. It was a bit of a strange choice when he said, hey, we want to be profitable. This was the time when every company was running on VC fuel, right? And then of late when the VC funding dried up, the so-called funding winter happened, people were still continuing to run on VC fumes, right? Nobody had stopped and said, how about being profitable? Like make your own money, don't depend on outside capital. That had not yet become fashionable. Like right now it is, but so almost like 36 months ago, it was not exactly fashionable to say, hey, let's try and become profitable. Because that involves its own sort of compromises that you do, right? But we went down that path. We said, I was determined to run it right and find the path to profitability before it became a burning need. Because once that happens, then you're laying off people or shutting down marketing or doing those brute force methods to hit profitability because the markets asked for it or your investor asked for it, right? Then you no longer have the strategic decision and then the levers to work patiently towards that goal. So we were profitable 9-10 months before time. We took the India business big enough to lead the global company to be profitable, and so on. So it was again, some of these choices that you all will make will feel contra, will get questioned a lot as through these 18 months as you're here, and afterwards you'll have lots of instances where people will say because it hasn't been done before, or it feels strange or contradictory, and you'll have to. My bias would be at that point just power through and have the fortitude to do what's right, even if it feels the tough choice at that point in time.
Yeah, it sounds easy when she just says it, but honestly, when you're in that boardroom or in that war room and you have to make these difficult choices that no, we will be profitable, we will not burn. It's okay if our growth is not the same as some of the other fintech companies that are growing maybe 5x in 1 year, but we'll grow maybe 3x or 2x, but we'll grow profitably. These are not easy decisions to make at that point of time. So it takes a lot out of you. And then you have to prove the decisions right. So the harder part is not just taking a decision, then proving the decision that it's right, because now you have counter forces coming to you from all sides. That why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Look at this fintech company doing this. But then you have to keep holding on that no, my decision will play out. And I keep running, believing and making the entire team also believe towards it as well. So it's not easy, I know. Seems like you always have a passion for education also. I mean, you're an IIM Ahmedabad grad yourself, but tell us more about your contributions with IIM Sambalpur. I know Prime Minister Narendra Modi was there to launch or inaugurate the IIM Sambalpur campus as well. But tell us more about what you do at IIM Sambalpur and your contributions.
I was telling Bhavik earlier that the only reason I joined the board was because I had a fangirl moment, because the chair of the board was Arundhati Bhattacharya, and she said, will you come? And I was like, dude, if you're there as the chair, of course I will kind of.
Anyone know who Arundhati Bhattacharya is, by the way?
She's the current CEO of Salesforce and the ex-MD of SBI, right? So, she's like literally listed as the 50 most powerful people in the world for many years because she was the MD of SBI, right? So, so that's how I landed up, having the early conversations and then beginning to even consider being in a board. But again, I was mentioning to Bhavik, I've been associated back with business schools in the form of either going back to recruit or going back for guest lectures or going back because I wanted to spend a weekend in campus, right? But have been associated in some shape or forms, almost bizarrely, for many years. And then this chance came about of actually being on the board of an educational institution. And I remember asking Arundhati, how is it different from another board, right? A regular board position you would do at another company and so on. I'm very, very happy to report that as a young business school, we, took again some brave choices. We said we'll up the diversity of our, intake pool. We said we'll offer sort of cutting-edge courses that young IIMs typically at that point didn't offer, right? They stuck with the safe. We decided to go ahead, build out campus, as opposed to we had a lot of government pressure to continue in some old buildings and so on, right? We said, you're offering us a loan, we'll draw down on that loan. It's our headache how we figure out our sort of financial plan to pay back kind of thing, right? So again, now the campus is ready. We have physical space. I was telling Bhavik, we got Modi to come and like cut the ribbon, and just it feels good when he comes and sort of formally inaugurates a building and so on. So the amount of pride that over the years, now I've been associated for 7-8 years, the amount of pride that the faculty now has in building up an institution from scratch. It's like greenfield. It's very fulfilling to see faculty, even students who they give a lot even after they graduate, right? So I'm sure your journeys will be equally, if not far more, sort of phenomenal. But yeah, I've enjoyed sort of going back.
That's
some
awesome.
shape or form to business school.
That's awesome. So I remember when we were working on this idea of Scalar School of Business, I just sent a message to Prabjeet, and I was like, hey, we're starting this, would love to just have you on the campus and contribute in some format. And I know you should talk to Sucheta first. And I think it must have been like one email is all it took for me to tell Sucheta, this is what we're trying to build with Scalar School of Business, would love for you to be a part of it in some way. And I think probably like less than a day later, I think you replied, saying that absolutely will support. So tell us what got you attracted to support us. I mean, it's a founding cohort. It's what a lot of people loosely term it as alt MBA. And quite honestly, like 56 of them have taken a bet on a new university, right, altogether. But you did too. I mean, one email away and he said, I'll be a part of it and help you out in any format. What got you excited about being a part of this story?
I think it's very exciting what you're doing. I genuinely am a big champion of most things. Definitely, and especially because I sit on the board of another, I definitely see you're on point on the courses that you're offering. Like, this is what the industry needs. And I definitely see this nice dovetailing of what I miss on the other side when I'm hiring, from traditional business schools, being fully fulfilled by courses like what you guys are going to be learning, right? It is absolutely on point on the kind of skill sets that we need today. So I'm very excited for you for the kind of courses you're doing. I'm very, very excited for sort of like the punt that Scalar is taking. I wish you all the power and a lot of good luck. I absolutely think these models need to be tried. Right? I do think that we need to go all in on models like these. And there's no sort of tentative, there shouldn't be tentativeness about it. I think we should try this. I think we should absolutely say, this is what the industry needs. Can we create an absolutely different looking program that meets the needs of the industry?
Yep.
So what if it doesn't smell like the old MBA? That's fine, right? But this is what the industry needs. Most people get into MBA in order to get a higher paycheck, switch industries, start a company, find better jobs, right? It doesn't matter what your sort of traditional model brick and mortar had been, or a new online MBA is, or what you guys are doing over here is. As long as you're meeting the needs of landing you the kinds of jobs that you all want to, that's success, right? So I'm very, very kicked for all of you. I just encourage all of you to take a good look at everyone else in this room. Trust me, a few years down the line, these are the folks that you will lean on. These are the folks that will be, CEOs, founders, vice presidents at big companies that you'll be so proud to have been associated with, right? And as the first batch, that's like a different sort of bragging rights that you'll get for perpetuity, which no other batch will get, right? So yeah, so you're like, it's so good to be part of something absolutely new. It shows that you're willing to take the risk. And that in itself is probably a singular sort of muscle that'll take you very far, right? So yeah, I'm excited.
Tell us about your MBA education. So I'm Ahmedabad, I'm sure, which means you've probably been a CAT percentile, 99 point something. Yeah. You went through 2 years of MBA there as well. How did that set the foundation for you? Because I think for all of them, they're there right now. And I think you spoke about what they should do already. But, a lot of the words we use right now, I know you mentioned BAU, or you mentioned order book, and you mentioned a few other words which I'm sure must have gone not fully understood by many of you right now, but you'll get there over the course of this period. So there's a lot for them to learn over the next 12 to 18 months. Tell us more about what you took away from the MBA, primarily what benefited you the most, and what they should focus more on over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. I think without any doubt, the MBA was very, very pivotal for my career. I don't think I would have I don't think it would have been the same trajectory or as fulfilling a trajectory minus the MBA, genuinely, right? It taught me the value of hard work. It's like a mini boot camp for what real business world is going to be. So many of you have already experienced corporate life, experienced companies, experienced the business world, right? So you already know, the stuff that doesn't work, right? Or the stuff that ends up being challenging, or a little bit at least you're familiar with, right? Even if you're, yeah. So for me, I think that tiny compressed boot camp of what rest of sort of the corporate world or business world would be was very, very useful, right? It taught me in the direct, almost linear, if not always, almost linear relationship between what you put in and what you get, right? There is no shortcut to the grades. There is no shortcut to clearing courses. There is no shortcut for like not finishing up the work that you had to in time, right? There is no shortcut to like working with your teammates. I mean, like all the projects that you have to do, all the group work that you have to do. You just have to learn the muscle of finding ways to work with everybody, because that's what real life is. Half the people you'll work with, and those you have worked, you already know, half the people you will get stuck with at work, 50% of them will be assholes. Yeah? You won't enjoy working with them, right? Like, it's true, right? But you still have to get the work done, right? So here, hopefully, I'm sure like none of you are jerks, but here you learn the business of, you learn how to get work done even with types that don't look and feel like you, even with people who have values probably dramatically different from yours. Folks who want to slack off instead of finishing on time, or folks who want to free ride, all of those that you'll learn later in life in terms of managing teams in terms of leading without authority. Over here, nobody's giving you a title of vice president that you can make the rest of your team work. No. Right? But you'll still have to find ways of delivering, brilliant results on your projects, on your internships, on your courses with the amount of influence that you have. That boot camp, that learning is what's going to then literally translate into your day-to-day operating style once you get into either you're founding your own company or joining someplace more formal. So that's what's going to translate into the actual muscle when you graduate. It literally taught me the value of hard work, it taught me the value of humility, just taught me that I have to learn to, learn to work with people. I mean, end of the day, like AI and tech will take care of so many parts of our lives, more and more, but there'll be some parts that, we just have to, have to learn the hard way, right? So I think the MBA education was pivotal for me, and I'm really, really sort of excited for what the kinds of sort of like fun stuff that you all will end up doing, both in these 18 months and beyond.
Yeah, no, we are too. I think it's going to be a fun ride. I think you briefly touched upon this earlier, but obviously being a woman in the industry, traditionally, and India's changing rapidly, which is really good. But traditionally, it's been a more male-dominated kind of a corporate society as such, right? And now it's good to kind of see so many women founders, so many women leaders coming up and stepping up as well. And we have 14 among our group of 56. Diversity is a big agenda for us as well, and we are hoping we'll keep getting better as the years progress. But tell us a little bit more about, or maybe the advice for the 14 in the crew on how can they become aspiring leaders in the future in a relatively more difficult environment still, unfortunately, for them.
There's probably lots of good ideas that people have, or lots of advice that one can parcel out. I'll pick one, which I think I'd love to leave you with one, right? What happens as women is we don't see enough role models like ourselves. We don't see enough women doing the kind of stuff that we define as success, right? Whatever your definition of success is, like whether it's to found a company or be a mother or whatever, right? Your definition of success. We don't find enough sort of archetypes that feel like us. And then, subconsciously we go into this mode of thinking, agar kisi ne kiya nahi hai, to nahi ho payega, right? You're like, there's a reason it's not happening, because it's probably hard or probably doesn't exist. So you subconsciously, the wiring, not intentionally, inadvertently, the wiring is that it's probably not possible, right? I would sort of, if there's one thing you can remember, I would try to sort of undo that wiring and be ambitious vicariously. Define your ambition as what your peer, who happens to be not a woman, what would he define as ambition? Yeah. All else being equal, what is his ambition looking like? What is his purpose looking like? Is he being held back? Probably not, where you are probably being held back, right? Women, because we haven't seen enough like us doing what we call great shit, we believe we're not even aspiring to great shit, right? Now that's kind of sad. We have to break that mold. Like, we can't solve the problem of not having enough inspiring women. So we're not going to solve it, right? But, you sort of be sort of the hero that you didn't have. don't, if we didn't have tough luck, yeah, what to do? But be the hero that you didn't have, right? So you don't know how many people you will inspire, but just being yourself and staying at it, right? So I would just leave you with that one thought. There's, of course, many things to go into, yeah.
Just a couple more questions from my side, and we'll take a few from the audience as well. I think one for me is business is evolving very rapidly. We talk about this a lot at Scalar School of Business when we're creating the curriculum also. Computers changed it, internet changed it, mobile phones changed it, now AI is changing it. I think as future business leaders, how do you kind of see areas that they should be more aware of or more equipped with so they can be more prepared for what the future, and I'm sure at the helm of where you are, you're seeing how the future is evolving already at the business, right? So any advice for them on what they should focus more on as future-ready business skills?
I think there's going to be no shortcut to staying abreast, unfortunately, right? We can't say, hey, I don't feel like figuring out what this AI is, let's park it. So in the world that you all are in right now, that's one of the sort of transaction costs you have to pay for all the good stuff that you get, right? The transaction cost is the following: you have to stay abreast, right? You also have to develop quick judgment on what to not waste your time on, right? I'm not saying you could have predicted whether blockchain will be a hit or crypto will be a hit or AI is going to be. You don't have to predict that future. I'm not saying that. But you have to be smart enough to know in your business for your customer which of these is likely to matter and which is not likely to matter, right? In your world, in your narrow lane, what amongst those outside externalities are going to matter? So that will probably be definitely in the form of tech, but it could be other things, right? It could be regulatory, it could be like stuff that your competitors are suddenly doing, that kind of thing. So I would say there's no shortcut to being aware. There's also no option but to be sort of have clear judgment on which parts are going to affect your life. By your life, I mean your business, your industry, your vertical, whatever that is, right? So I think the one other thing that you all have to probably do more than some of us got away with is, I think you'll have to, we all, we have plans, we have clear goals, we execute against those goals, we deliver. I think you'll have to ruthlessly prioritize much more than anyone did in the last 10 years. Yeah. Because there's just so much going on, like it's very, very distracting. You get 14 partner emails over 2 days. Everybody's proposing a new partnership all the time, right? Yeah. And 13 of them look sexy. Like really, you want to start an early dialogue, dekhte hain. It looks interesting because there is that much going on, right? So you all will have to prioritize more ruthlessly than I think we had to, at least in the early years, right? Because you will be bombarded with a lot more. So I think that will be a bit of a, you plan, do, this thing, but also ruthlessly prioritize. I think that will be a big...
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the things I keep saying is, back in the day, at least when we were doing our MBAs, etc., there was still information asymmetry. Everyone didn't have equal access to information, which basically when you could bullshit your way through, right? You could pretend to be, I know this stuff, and you could just bullshit your way through, and in many ways, that's what back in the day consultants became famous for, right? Because you're like, hey, I went to this fancy MBA school, I may not know stuff, but because I believe I have more information than you do. But now you live in a world of information symmetry. I mean, you have YouTubes of the world, and you have everything that's possible on your phone, that you have so much information, like she said, you can't really bullshit your way through, which basically means you'll have to figure out areas that you actually develop a niche in and be really good at it versus just, trying to bullshit all along. Yeah. It's not going to happen. I guess last question from me, power couple. I'm sure the dynamics at home must be crazy as well. You travel a lot, Prabjeet must be traveling a lot. He's the head of WeWork India. I mean, you're MD branch and many things before as well. And you guys have 2 kids to raise. How do you guys share responsibilities outside of work?
Yeah. Since he's not here, I should just say that I do it all or find some other cool answer. No, I think it's a challenge when you have to balance. It's one more thing to balance, right? Like, when both spouses are, have equally sort of busy jobs, right? It becomes one more thing to balance. I wish there were, again, this is one of those things where there's not enough role. I wish there were more people like us. I wish enough women sort of then stayed on in careers that this became a problem.
Yeah.
My point is, yeah, this is a good problem to have.
Very good
right?
problem
Like,
to have, yes.
right, of all, like it's so good that I get frustrated and I like do argue with Prab and we argue back. I'm not kidding. But think about it. It's a good problem to have where we're actually having to balance two busy careers, right? It would. So I think of it that way, right? It is hard, but think about the privilege and the gratefulness and the good problemness of this whole setup. So I think we figure it out. A lot of it is a band-aid, like half my life is a band-aid. Something's breaking, I'm patching it, something's breaking, I'm patching it. But I'm having a lot of fun, and while it's busy, it's also fulfilling. I've got 2 young kids, and as you know, it's a very fun phase. This is the only time in life where somebody thinks I'm God. Like, they just like trust me and unquestioningly love me. They're growing up, so that phase will also end. But I'm loving it. Yeah. So I don't have to justify my value. So yeah, it's.
How
it's
many
a
of you
fun
guys
thing.
want to join a consulting firm? Yeah. So, Bain or McKinsey? Prabjeet went to McKinsey.
Yeah.
You went to Bain.
Yes.
Which one's better?
For the exact same period of time, we were sleeping with the enemy. Like, went to completely, rival firms. Which is better? Bain is better. Like, what are you asking? Yeah, matlab.
All right.
No, they're slightly different character firms. So if you're interested, then the tone, both do great work, as does BCG. I don't want to leave out BCG. I, of course, have my clear pecking order. But these firms, while they all do great work, all these firms have slightly different characters. So you'll have to find the one that speaks more to you, that is more. I thrived at Bain. I absolutely crushed it at Bain. I was in the fast track to partner and so on. I'm not sure I would have been as happy at McKinsey. My type was better suited to Bain. Yeah. So you all will have to find your own sort of, yeah. It's a bit of a marriage, so you have to find your type, yeah.
Oh, we'll take a few questions. Anyone any questions for Sucheta?
So, see, I have my playbook. I don't know if it is the right playbook, but I'll answer sort of both questions together. I think you're trying to ask what are those possibly personal traits that also translated into maybe good leadership, right? I know style-wise, I take my work very, very seriously, but I don't take myself too seriously, right? So I'm not afraid of being made fun of or, fooling around. I always say as a leader, you should be the first one to jump into the pool fully clothed. Right? You have to have that courage to make fun of yourself. Right? If you are so centered, if you're strong on your job, if you know your shit, then you're unafraid to also, let your hair down, right? You see, people connect not with the polished persona of you. People connect to your rough, jagged edges. Right? So the more centered you are, the more you're willing to expose those jagged edges. That's what hooks the other person to you, right? Yeah. So when you're an authentic leader, when you're vulnerable, when you're talking straight, when you're direct and, I'm unapologetic for the hard taskmaster I am. I'm unapologetic for amount of sort of work that has to be put in, right? But I'm also genuine, authentic. I tell people when I don't know, I'm vulnerable. I tell them, dude, I'm out of my depth right now, right? So it's a very sort of direct but honest relationship that then teams begin to appreciate, right? They start behaving the same with you. So when you start when you join a company, right, or slightly different if you're founding, but if you're joining, you start with earning people's trust. Your team should trust that you can do the job. You have to get to a position of trust. You have to master the craft, right? From trust, you should get to a stage of respect. People around you should respect you for the kind of person who gets his stuff done. You go trust, you go respect, and then you go to friendship. Right? When you are that kind of person that people can rely on again and again, and then that matures to beautiful friendship. Right? So as a leader, there's no I parachuted in, I have this title, you please respect me. You earn your way from scratch, and from a personality trait, I think I don't take myself too seriously. I take the work seriously, right? I always do something that I suck at. Always, I'm doing something that I'm terrible at. Right now, I'm trying to learn tennis, right? I'm the person who sat next to Virat Kohli and didn't recognize him. That's how bad I'm at sports. To be in my defense, it was when he was playing U19. He had not become so famous. Okay, now I do recognize him. But I didn't know jack about sports. I don't know jack about sports. But I'm doing something that that I find deeply difficult, right? The uncomfortable feeling, you have to ritualize that discomfort. If you ritualize the discomfort, it's part of your day, then you don't worry about being uncomfortable in front of the team. Then you don't worry about, there's no fear. It's a very authentic, honest relationship with the team, and then trust builds. Then the team start counting on you. Then it sort of like positively spirals from there. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, I don't think I have a playbook either. So. See, I think, completely honestly, and I don't know if this is kosher anymore, right? I think the world has changed. But for me, that question I would have answered differently when I was just starting out. Yeah. And I will answer differently if asked to. Yeah, so when I was just starting out, my honest answer, right, no bullshit answer is, in the early days, I said very few no's. And I'll tell you why. I thought any practice is good practice. Because I was desperate, I was trying to learn, I was ambitious, I wanted to do more. I remember the first few months when I was at Bain, I used to walk up and say, why do I have this, you used to get time between two projects, where you didn't have work to do. So I would walk up to people and say, do you have something to parcel out to me, right? In today's generation, the importance of work-life balance and all that is there, was not so big for me, was probably not so big for my generation, and definitely not so big for me. So in my early days, I welcomed being busy. I welcomed learning because I knew that was the only way. I didn't know jack, right? So I had to learn. And so I actually said less no's and more yeses at work, right? And I welcomed sort of that drinking from a fire hose wala state of life, right? Like I said, it may not be kosher anymore. Nowadays, the world's different. But that was me, right? Versus now where time is at a premium, energy is what I have to manage. I have to manage energy more than time also. I have to make sure that I am constantly creating enough mental bandwidth for the right things, right? And so I have to now I have to say a lot of no's, right? So I say to anything that is, I protect my energy with a sword and a shield type frame of mind, right? Anything that is de-energizing or not worth my time, I'll say no. But anything that's energizing, I'll say a very quick and easy yes to, right? This sounds right, isme maza aayega, this I'll learn something, chalo, right? So my prioritization is closely linked to the kinds of things I want to, my purpose now. But in the early days, frankly, I didn't say that many no's, right? And I'm happy for it.
ROI changes. The ROI earlier was learning and now it is more of a business and outcome, maybe.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Now purpose also got clearer and clearer with time. At that time, purpose was just learn. Now purpose is hey, I know what I'm doing, right? So if it's not incrementally additive, why do it, kind of thing. So now it's slightly different, yeah. Yeah, toxic managers are real, right? So let's not be facetious about it. We have definitely in India, we have a crisis of good leadership, good managership, right? That's why you all are here, to partly fix that problem, right? We have lesser, qualified, people often grow, and many of you are from startups. You've seen people get promoted or grow as a result of years spent, or is bar funding aa gayi, or, arbit reason as opposed to their ability to actually lead a team, right? So we do definitely have a crisis of sort of middle management. We have in pockets brilliant top management teams. Many top management teams you'll find surprisingly are great, right? But a lot of sort of jerks are filled in middle layers. Yeah, that's true. I don't want to be facetious and say it doesn't exist. There's a very high likelihood we'll all face them. Myself included, will face some more of those. You'll have to develop with time, including what you learn over here, you'll develop a toolkit of resources that lets you at least minimize the problem. Sometimes you'll simply avoid. You'll change team, you'll change company, you'll leave that project. But there'll be times where you can't avoid. But I guarantee you there is a toolkit of resources that will help you minimize the problem. Number one, right? And there's clear tools to do it. Number two is I think the world's genuinely changing, and now it's far easier for all of us to pipe up and oppose what is shit behavior. Yeah. Earlier that was way harder, so one had to just suck it up a lot more. Now I feel like now it's gotten better. One can talk about it and say, look, this is not okay. Yes, stop it, kind of thing. And you have now much more channels, and you have to know, and you've worked, so you'll get it. Leaders, senior people are quite scared of their lack of integrity being exposed by social media or in other ways, right? So they are more careful. Genuinely, people are scared of the If they don't have professional integrity and that's going to get exposed, it's now a real possibility because of social media. Earlier, you could get away being a bad manager and rise to very high. Now, chances are you'll get exposed, right? So that's also led to so much more good behavior, or you have chances of leveraging that aspect of it. Yeah.
But the last problem here is when you just speak up for whatever happens, like bad or something. So basically, we are in the company, then you're out of the company. That's what happens actually.
Yeah, no, we can problem solve that. There's of course no one clean answer. There's scenarios that could possibly help, so we can problem solve that outside. Yeah, I think that's a specific thing we can. Look, I'm not going to answer that question for you. That's something that you will have to see. See, you get out of anything how much you put into it. Whether it's your job, whether it's learning cycling, whether it's being a mother, whether it's being like you want to volunteer in a cancer ward, you do that. I'm saying you have to make peace with sort of the effort, reward of that dimension of your life, right? You want to go all in being like, I have friends who've decided to just be a full-time mother, right? They want to go all in on business of raising a child. That's not wrong. The effort reward of that is very different from somebody who's decided to become a founder, right? Man or woman, I mean saying like, I have a guy friend who's, because his wife has, a batchmate of mine, his wife gets transferred internationally. So he's decided to become a full-time father. So man or woman doesn't matter. The effort reward of whichever dimension you pick, you have to make peace with that. So, like depending on which company, which industry, which line of work you are, if you put in more, do you get out more, and does that give you happiness? Or do you want to balance, home with whatever, or do you want to like balance CrossFit with your work, and CrossFit gives you more happiness, and you don't want to you want to, become an Ironman and that gives you more happiness. So you will have to sort of balance out the effort reward of the various dimensions of your life, and you will have to do and you sort of optimization algorithm on where your maximum happiness and fulfillment will come from, and then you put in effort around it. So it's almost it's a very deeply personal choice. So I wouldn't recommend one or the other. I'm just saying that of late people have far more choices, and the generational shift around is different from what sort of was okay in my